Okay, so I'm going to talk about us and about the crisis that we're in. Ethnic identity, and I would like to start with the pre-ethnic national identity. Yes, I think yes. The man who finds his homeland sweet is still a tender beginner. He to whom every soil is as his native one is already strong. But he is perfect to whom the entire world is a foreign land. This is the trick we need to learn, to have our own world ours as well as a foreign land. I'm trying to look at the ways in which we identify, disidentify, where our ethnicity and somehow is the precursor to a kind of narrow nationalism that is destructive. It's interesting that identity leads to nationalism. It is actually nationalism that creates the nation, not the other way around. So we have in this a sense of nationalist, thinking, which then leads to forming of the nation. But as I'll keep referring to this again, there's another group outside of us, the not us, the as hugely not us as possible, the furthest away from us, and we'll call them the subaltern for the time being. This group, for them, the arguments from nationalism do not clinch, because the space, the discourse is so far removed from their lived experience, it does not make sense. Often I'm told by them, when I'm working in Batiklo or some places, are you going back to Sri Lanka? Because that's what it is. In Nepal, when you go out, they say, are you going back to Nepal? The thing is, this is outside. What they have is the love of their first language, the love of their home and its environments, but that's not nationalism. Let's keep that in mind as we move to the issue of identity. Now, we need to recognize that it's usual for us to think of identity, especially ethnic identity, as an essential part of our being. We see identities as determined by birth, by ancestry. We recognize that they are reinforced by religion, by culture, by language. We associate our belonging to each of these identities as natural and strong and overriding everything else. We may be upper class, middle class, working class, we still treasure this thing. And in fact, these are what we call our roots. Those who don't react to the threat, either it's perceived or real, against our identities, these are seen as weak people, inauthentic, even cowardly. Ultimately, what happens is their very identity is what is questioned, not their arguments. So, and I will explain this further. Now, what happens in the manipulation of identities, and I mischievously use the quote from Goering, who says, people don't want war. This is during the Nuremberg trials. He said, people don't want war. But we can manipulate them. How do you manipulate them? Voice or no voice, the people can be always brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in every country, he says. You just got to tell them, we're being attacked. And then we will be there. Here's a progressive identity. And I think I can't do any better than take the paradigmatic case of Sangakkara in his Cowdery lecture 2011. He says, I will keep paramount in my mind my Sri Lankan identity. Fans of different races, castes, ethnicities, and religions who together celebrate their diversity by uniting for a common national cause. They are my foundation. They are my family. I will play my cricket for them. Their spirit is the true spirit of cricket. With me are all my people. I am Tamil, Sinhalese, Muslim, and Burgher. I am Buddhist, a Hindu, a follower Islam and Christianity. I am today and always proudly Sri Lankan. There is no question of Sangakkara's bona fides, and as Guruparan states in an article, he doesn't preach at all. But that's about all we can give him. The shared ethnicity he posits is based on commonality and a firmly cherished, accepted worldview. What happens if this initial premise is broken? Sangakkara doesn't present the negative scenario, but the dominant nationalist paradigm does. There is no place in the Lankan identity for those who do not support our cricket. So his fans are his country, but what about those who don't? One may ask legitimately, what happens to that group? And the answer is invariably to splutter in disbelief that you have actually asked such a foolish question. Right. Here's the dominant identity. So let's leave. This is, I think, important and worth spending a little time. This is the classic model of the dominant ideology, of which Sangakkara's is the progressive version. The only persons who do not feel it in their very flesh and bones that they must fight to defend their country are not only traitors and cowards, but we should check whether they are really Sri Lankans. Because no true Lankan, no genuine son of the soil can actually feel this way. Perhaps they're outsiders, mistakes of nature. It is unthinkable that any real Sinhalese can feel any other way in their hearts and souls. People can lie and cheat for money and power, but how can anyone betray their own country? How can they forsake their own blood? Being Sinhalese must be more than having a Sinhalese name. And here it is. People who support another country over Sri Lanka, even at a cricket match, just as those who want our war heroes to be humiliated to suit a foreign agenda, do not deserve to live here. And most importantly, they cannot be genuinely Sri Lankan or Sinhalese. So it's their identity that's questioned, not their argument. And of course, Sangakkara has nothing to say to this because his team is the team that supports him. So the common sense understanding of our ethnic identity is that we are born into an identity, into an ethnicity. We are Sinhala or Tamil or Burgher or Muslim or Adivasi because our parents are the same. We have no choice in that sense, as our ethnic identity is fixed, predetermined, and beyond our control. It follows that this natural, authentic identity shapes our world and behavior. We become human through our ethnicities. And of course, as an aside, we will say, fortunately for us, our ethnicity is the best in the world. Yes. So, what happens? We have a nuancing of this identity, and we say identity is that which is given to us, what we call, and the others give us. But of course, others assign an identity when we are marginalized, when we are discriminated. That's the classic form. We identify others negatively, right? Identity, we say, is controlled by rationality. It's not. In fact, it is the suprarational. It is the pre-rational. We also talk about multiple, not single affiliations. But I must say, it's important to recognize that, no one in their right mind would think that the terrible attacks of the Muslim Rohingyas by the Myanmar state, for example, would be because they are Sanskritists or economists or accountants. It's because of their ethnicity and identity. That's the classic thing. That's the only one that you can attack somebody on. That's the only one that you can chase them. But of course, again, there's another point about identity that's important. We cherish identity because we see that as the hallmark of resisting this intrusive capitalism. Capitalism invades our very space, but our ethnicity is something that is part of our family, our roots, and so on. It's outside of this capital. Ironically, so that's why we have a resurgence of various forms of identities, particularly ethnic ones in Sri Lanka today, and also in other parts of the world. But if we think a minute, it's also the same case. It's also the case that there is a trend now for precisely the commodification and the branding of identity, which is then exported in terms of tokens and symbols and slogans. So we have a corporate identity as well. There is a corporate identity of being Sinhala or Lankan, and we show it in terms of, something that we wear or something that we don't wear. So I think that tension is important to recognize as well. So we are ready to fight on behalf of identity. We will defend our ethnic group in many ways. In our discourse, identity is pre-rational. It's foundational. It's inherited. It's the wellspring of our subjecthood. This invokes the highest loyalty. It invokes the sort of most important thing, the sort of thing that is prior to everything. Right. So ethnic identities are based, as we have seen, on birth, naming, language, religion. But these things taken together still do not sufficiently explain the stranglehold and obsession that ethnicity occupies in our lives. Ethnicity cuts across, or appears to cut across, the crucial categories of class, gender, religion, age, region. It is for us an undeniable proud essence. We sort of self-deprecatingly don't push it, but we know we're the best. And we know that's our essence. It's the core of our being. On the other hand, we become teachers, poets, students, monks, activists. These are matters of choice and circumstance. But we cannot undo our ethnicity, which is essential for our being. Ethnicity owns us, and we are its product. Now, this is true for most Sri Lankans. In fact, working on the atrocities committed against Muslims in the Digan area in the recent past, we spoke to, and our key interlocutor told us that this is not justifiable. We asked why. Because the violence was not spontaneous, that is, based on the information of natural feelings. If that were there, that would be explainable. It's not even produced by sensitivity to the injustice committed against a fellow Sinhalese. That was also natural. He says the trouble here is this was planned and artificial, not authentic and natural, hence wrong, inexcusable. Can you see? So the kind of, with identity you expect it to be emotional, you expect it to have that anger and so on. If it's not there, then it can't be genuine identity. Right. So we're looking at this, and is this then completely uncontested terrain? And I'm saying no. I'm saying while this discourse is dominant, there is a group who cannot challenge this hegemonic view. They cannot even appear on our radar screen, but whose everyday lives and understated practices completely and utterly refute our most cherished understanding of identity and identity politics. This group, I call them subalterns. We can call them whatever we want, and I said I refer to that. These are people who are on the margins of society, whom we say they accept wretchedness as normality. They can't think of anything else. They have no access to the lines of upward mobility. They adorn its borders, they create its exceptions, they represent its edges. As I said, nationalism doesn't harbor the same demand for them as it does for the upper, lower, and even the middle and lower classes. And from nationalism from which many of the middle and upper classes profit. So what I'm going to do now here is, as I pointed out, I'm going to show you 3 videos that I've taken. It's taken me about 20 years to do this. It's really difficult stuff. When we first showed this, I remember showing it in Washington, and the embassy called me. And they said, we need the names of these people because they're all potential suicide bombers because they can move from one ethnicity to the other. And I said, go to hell. Right? But of course, so here we have then ethnicity as becoming, earning the right, paying the price.
අම්මා පල්ලි අම්මා තාත්තා යන්න දෙන්නම දෙමළ
The family originated from the Vadda community or Adivasis, and one of its members says she believes equally in Buddhism and Hinduism. They have 2 first languages or mother tongues, Sinhala and Tamil. Some of the trauma that is contained in this duality can be seen from the novice Buddhist monk of this family, who says he can't remember how many siblings he has. He's also embarrassed and unsure about his first language. He remains, as it were, in the wider world, persona non grata between both cultures. Whereas in his village, his mother is comfortable with her dual religion or multiple religion and her dual languages.
ජාතිය කියන්නේ අපේ උපතින් දෙයන්න ආශ්‍රයෙන් ආව.
හිතේනේ තියෙන්නේ. හොඳ සිංහල තමයි. ඒ වුණාට දැන් ඉතින් කොහොම කලම හොඳ දෙයක්. ඔක්කොම එකලේනේ. කොහොම දරුවන්ට කියලා දරුවන්ගේ දරුවන්ට කියලා.
කැමති වෙන්නේ නැතුව නෑ. අපි ළමයි ඉන්නවා.
දැන් කියන්නකෝ දැන් ඔයා ගැන පොඩි විස්තරයක් කියන්නකෝ දැන් මම අවුරුදු 25ට පස්සේ ඔයාත් එක්ක කතා කරන්නේ.
මගේ නම තාම්බි මුතු විසෝමයි. මගේ අම්මා සිංහල තාත්තා දෙමළ. අපේ ගමේ මේ දෙමළ සිංහල කියලා එහෙම වාද ભેදයකුත් දෙමළයි සිංහලයි කැලවමේ ඉන්නවා. ඒගොල්ලෝ හරි සමගියෙන් ජීවත් වෙනවා. දැන් මගේ ජාතිය සිංහල බෞද්ධ ජාතිය ශ්‍රී ලංකා ජාතිය 50ට 50 නම් ඔක්කොම එකට ඉන්නේ. මගේ නම පූවදි. තාත්තා සිංහල අම්මා දෙමළ. දරුවෝ සිංහල කතා කරනවා දෙමළ කතා කරනවා. මුස්ලිම් යරි අනිත් දේවල් ඔක්කොම ආම දන්. ඒක යාළගෙමනේ. දීපාවලි. දීපාවලි වලට දේවාලයටත් යනවා. හැම පොයේටම පන්සලටත් යනවා. පන්සලේ දායකයෝ වගේ ඉතින් දන් සීතු අරගෙන දානක් දෙනවා. මිනිස්සු සියලු දෙනාම දාන දෙනවා පන්සලට.
දුවට පුළුවන් සිංහල පුළුවන් දුවට. සිංහලද පුළුවන් නේ?
කතා කරා.
ඈ දෙමළ බෑ. දිව දික් කරා. ඈ තෝගේ ආගම මොකද්ද? ඈ? දැන් මෙහි කෝවිලට මේ උත්සවයට මුස්ලිම් කට්ටියත් එනවලු නේද?
නෑ ඔහොම දෙයකට තමයි එන්නේ ඉතින්. දාන දෙන්න අරකට මේකටමයි එන්නේ.
ඒගොල්ලන් ඉන්නේ
බාරෙන්ද තනවද?
ඔව් එයාලා බාර විලා. එයාලා කැමති.
ඔව් මුස්ලිම් කැමති කයිනේ. ඔව්.
අදත් ගියලෝ යා.
He's an artist who's here in the audience, who sort of tried to present this in a different way. These are 3 self-portraits. So that's the progressive art, and here is the radical practice. We have my monk who we spoke about, another novice. So there is no visible difference here as in the paintings, but there is the importance of becoming. So what you would have noticed in the videos is the mistakes they make. They say Sinhala is my religion, Buddhism is my race or my ethnicity. But when you think about it, Sinhala has become a religion for us. And we operate as if it were religion. So these mistakes, their ability to make the mistake means that they haven't learnt the rules. And not learning the rules means they're able to critique all of this stuff very clearly. It's like the child who recognized the emperor had no clothes. So I think we need to understand, and that's very important, what we have here. If we take these mistakes seriously, then we will learn the problems that we have entrenched and internalized in terms of our valuing of identity and ethnicity. So what happens here, if we are ready to learn these quiet, understated practices about becoming, not being. The monks have become Buddhists. We are Buddhists just by birth. How does that work? So the thing is, the one becoming in the sense that one repeatedly earns a right and corrects oneself as one goes on. One learns by doing, one does by learning. It is as alien to the patronizing hierarchy of tolerance as it is to the hegemonic exclusion of radical difference, both within and without dominant identities. I'm saying, see, they mistake ethnicity for religion, religion for ethnicity. The woman says, I was born to one group and now I'm mixed. And we laugh and say, that's wrong. But what a wonderful notion of identity that is. identity that is fluid, that's related to practice, to becoming, not being. Right. So I would say that this rule breaking subverts and challenges the hierarchies and the values that we have. Are we up to accepting this challenge, or are we going to reproduce precisely these old notions of ethnicity and identity, and then keep reenacting the tragedies of our times again and again? Thank you.